In ElectroBIM, we have the project options, and this is where you control all the various settings you have for ElectroBIM in your project. And there's a lot of options, and we will take a look at all of these. When you make these changes, you then have to figure out how to get these changes to other projects, because when you make a change to all of this, you're going to get this set up once. You want to have it all configured for how your company likes to work, and you don't want to have to make these changes in every project. There's really two ways you can handle that. One, you can open up your template file, run this command, the project options command in your template file, and make the changes there. And then that template will have the settings in it, and then all projects based upon that template will have your settings. The other option is to use the customization, export, and import commands. So you would find the project, you would get everything set up properly there. Then you can run the export command. When you run this, you have choices for what you are actually exporting and where you're exporting it to. So you give it a file location that you're going to export, and then choose what you want to export, the various option settings, and then also some wire sizing and transformer settings. And you can save that to a file. And then in future projects, you run the customization import command. So you take that file that you've exported it, and then you import it into other projects. So that's just two different ways you can do the template, or you can do the export import. One benefit to the export import is that you can then pull that into projects that have already started. Otherwise, if you use the template, you have to make sure to start with that template. And then once the project started, there's no way to update it. So the export import gets around that limitation with the templates. So if you have a template, you can set that up. There's probably a place for everyone to be using export import as well. Let's take a look at the selective coordination graph options. These are controlling what your breaker curve graphs look like. So if I go take a look at a selective coordination graph, this is what we're controlling. So we have this graph that we generate of the curves, and there's a couple options we have for adjusting the output here. The title, that's the default title. You can change that per selective coordination graph, so that can be modified, but this is just the default title that we will come in, and that's going to show up at the top there. Then we have the text types separated out between the title and the labels. So we can have the title a different text size from the labels, and you'll need to input what those values are. By default, those are going to be blank. So if I go over here to this, the Revit sample project, which hasn't been configured with our software, and we take a look at project options, you can see that these values are blank. So what's going to happen when we insert a selective coordination graph is that we're going to use the most recent text style. What that means is that when you update it, it actually might change, because the text style, it might pull a different one. So if you are using our selective coordination graphs, we would recommend that you go in and you set this to a specific value so that we're getting in the right text value. The problem is that the text types are different for every company. And so you probably want to, you'll need to set this to what your company has for their text types. We have the option for whether to include the border or not. And that's a draw border or no border. If you turn that off, this border won't be drawn. Then we have line styles for all the different lines that are shown in that selective coordination graph. So we have a line for the border, line for those fault labels, the line style for the grid lines, and the line styles for the curve outlines. And so you can set each of those line styles separately, and you'll need to specify the line style that you have configured in your project. We have our default values. If we can't find the line style with that name, we will create it with some default values. But if you don't like our defaults and you want to override it, you can assign it to a line style that you've created. Finally, we have the curve fill types, and this is what's used for the shading inside of those curves. We have 4 different fill regions, and if you have more than 4 curves, we actually just repeat after that. So we'll do 1 through 4 and then 1 through 4 again. But each of those fills can have a different style if you want it to. Now, for setting these text types, the line styles, and the region filled region types, those are being pulled from Revit if you're wanting to override our values. So I'll show you where all of those are configured. For the text styles, the way to get to that is you actually have to select a piece of text in Revit, and then over in properties, you have this edit type, and this will show you all of your text styles. It is possible there's another way without selecting a piece of text to get here. I'm not a Revit expert, and I was not able to locate that. This will definitely get you there. So you insert a selective coordination graph, go select a piece of text, and then you can run edit type and get here. So these are the types that you have defined. Your company probably has standards for this already. So you just need to make sure that the name that you input in our options matches the name that your company has configured. And then for changing all of those settings, Revit has all the parameters here for changing how those text styles work. For line styles, those are on the Manage tab. Under Additional Settings, Line Styles. And if we expand this, you can see all of the line styles in the project, including those ones that we created automatically. So this is where you specify your line weight, the color, and every company has their line weight set up a little bit differently in terms of how that's going to end up plotting. So you want to make sure that these match your standards. If you're using ours, you'll want to make sure that these are set right, or you can assign it to a line style that you already have defined. But this is where those are being defined. And again, you want to make sure that the name here in Revit matches the name in ElectroBIM. Finally, we have the fill styles. Again, to find those, select a filled region and press edit type. And then this is the list of types in your project. So we will create ours with some default colors. If you want to create your own and assign them, or if you want to modify ours, this is where you do that. And then you can change the coloring and the line weight, anything else on these.